My name is Marcus Webb, and for the past 3 years, I have been the night auditor at the Riverside Grand Hotel. If you do not know what a night auditor does, let me explain. We are the ones who keep watch when the world sleeps. We check guests in after midnight, balance the books, handle emergencies, and most importantly, we see things that the day shift never does. The Riverside Grand is not one of those gleaming corporate hotels you see in travel magazines. Built in 1928, it sits on the edge of downtown like a forgotten monument to another era. 7 stories of Art Deco architecture, with brass fixtures that have not been polished in decades and carpets that have witnessed more stories than I could ever tell. The lobby smells like old wood, lemon cleaner, and something else I have never been able to identify. Something ancient. I took this job because I needed the money and because I have always been a night person. My ex-wife used to complain that I was nocturnal, that I came alive when everyone else was sleeping. She was right. There is something peaceful about the night shift, something almost meditative. At least that is what I used to think. It started 6 months ago on a Tuesday night in June. The summer heat had settled over the city like a wet blanket, and our air conditioning system was struggling to keep up. I was behind the front desk working through the night audit reports when the front door opened. She walked in alone, pulling a small black suitcase behind her. Mid-30s, auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a white blouse that looked like she'd been traveling all day. Her face was pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Good evening," I said, putting on my professional smile. "Welcome to the Riverside Grand. Do you have a reservation?" She approached the desk slowly, her footsteps echoing in the empty lobby. "No," she said quietly. "I need a room for tonight. Just tonight." Her voice had a strange quality to it, flat and distant, as if she was speaking from very far away. "Of course," I replied, pulling up the reservation system. "We have several rooms available. Would you prefer a king or 2 queens?" "King," she said, something high up, away from the street noise. I nodded and began entering her information. "Can I have your name, please?" She hesitated for just a moment. "Sarah Chen, and can I see an ID and credit card?" She reached into her purse and handed me her driver license and a credit card. I scanned them both, noting that her hands were trembling slightly. The license photo looked nothing like her. The woman in the picture was smiling, vibrant, alive. The woman standing in front of me looked like a shell. "You're all set, Miss Chen," I said, handing back her cards and giving her a key card. "Room 617. Elevators are just past the lobby to your right. Breakfast is served from 6 to 10 in the morning, though I should mention our breakfast is pretty basic, continental style." She took the key card without looking at me. "Thank you," she whispered. "Is everything all right?" I asked. "You look like you have had a long day." For the first time, she looked directly at me, and I felt something cold run down my spine. Her eyes were empty, completely void of emotion. "I am fine," she said, "just tired." She turned and walked toward the elevators, her suitcase rolling behind her. I watched her until she disappeared around the corner, then returned to my audit reports. Something about the interaction bothered me, but I could not put my finger on what. The rest of the night was uneventful. I finished the audit, helped a guest who locked himself out of his room, and spent the last hour before my shift ended reading a thriller novel I had been working through. At 7 in the morning, Jennifer, the morning shift supervisor, arrived to relieve me. "Quiet night?" she asked, setting her coffee down on the desk. "Pretty much," I replied. "One late check-in?" "Room 617. She nodded, already pulling up the day reports on the computer. As I gathered my things to leave, I glanced at the reservation system one more time. Sarah Chen, room 617, scheduled to check out today at noon. I forgot about Sarah Chen. The next few nights were busy with a small convention of pharmaceutical sales representatives who partied too loudly and made too many maintenance requests. It was not until Friday night that I thought about her again. I was reviewing the occupancy reports when I noticed something odd. Room 617 was still showing as occupied. I checked the notes. No checkout recorded, no additional nights booked. The reservation just showed as extended, but there was no indication of who had extended it or when. "That is weird," I muttered to myself. I picked up the phone and dialed the room. It rang 15 times before I hung up. Maybe she was sleeping. Maybe she had gone out. I made a note to check with the day shift about it and continued with my work. An hour later, Around 2 in the morning, the front door opened again. A man this time, probably in his early 40s, wearing an expensive suit that was slightly rumpled. He carried a leather overnight bag and walked with the careful precision of someone had been drinking but was trying very hard not to show it. "Good evening, sir," I said, checking in. He approached the desk and leaned against it heavily. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough. "I need a room, tonight only." I pulled up the reservation system. "Do you have a reservation?"
Oh.
He said, "Just got into town. Unexpected business." "No problem," I replied. "Can I have your name, please?" He pulled out his wallet, fumbling slightly. I processed his check-in, noting his slurred speech and the strong smell of whiskey coming from him. As I handed him his key card, I said, "Mr. Hutchins, just so you know, we have a quiet hours policy after 10 p.m. If you need anything, please call the front desk rather than disturbing other guests." He took the key card and nodded slowly. "What room?" 512, I said. "Elevators are just past the lobby." He stared at the key card for a long moment, then looked up at me with an expression I could not quite read. Regret, maybe, or fear. "Thank you," he said quietly, then walked toward the elevators. I watched him go, wondering what unexpected business brings a drunk man to a hotel at 2 in the morning. In my experience, it was usually one of two things: a failing marriage or a failing business. Sometimes both. Saturday morning, Jennifer noticed it too. "Room 512, she said when I came in for my shift that night. "Mr. Hutchins never checked out. His reservation expired at noon, but he is still in there." "Did you call the room?" I asked. 3 times, she replied. No answer. Housekeeping knocked twice. No response, but the do not disturb sign is on the door. So we left him alone. Maybe he is just sleeping off a hangover. I thought about Robert Hutchins, about the way he had looked at that key card like it was a death sentence. "Maybe," I said. That night I decided to investigate. At around 3 in the morning, when the hotel was at its quietest, I took a walk through the hallways. I started on the 6th floor, walking down the corridor to room 617. The door was closed, the do not disturb sign hanging from the handle. I stood there for a moment, listening. Nothing. No television. No movement. No sound at all. I knocked softly. "Miss Chen? Housekeeping needs to know if you will be extending your stay." Silence. I knocked again, louder this time. "Miss Chen, this is Marcus from the front desk. I need to verify your checkout date." Still nothing. I returned to the front desk and checked the security camera footage from the 6th floor. I scrolled back through the past 5 days. Watching the hallway at high speed, guests came and went. Housekeeping carts rolled past, but room 617 remained still. The door never opened. Not once. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the footage. 5 days. Sarah Chen had been in that room for 5 days without coming out. No food delivery. No trash taken out. No movement at all. I picked up the phone and almost called the police, then stopped. What would I say? That a guest was staying in their room. They had not come out. That was not illegal. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she just wanted privacy. Maybe I was overreacting. Instead, I went down to the 5th floor and checked on Robert Hutchins. Room 512 had the same do not disturb sign hanging on the door. I knocked. No answer. I checked the security footage for the 5th floor. Since checking in Friday night, Robert Hutchins had not left his room either. 2 guests. 2 rooms. Both entered, neither exited. My heart was pounding now. I went back to the front desk and pulled up the reservation history for the past month, looking for any other irregularities. What I found made my blood run cold. Room for 23. Guest checked in 3 weeks ago, still showing as occupied. No checkout. Room 331. Checked in 2 weeks ago, still occupied. Room 708. Checked in 10 days ago, still occupied. 5 rooms total, all showing guests who had checked in but never checked out. 5 guests who had entered their rooms and never emerged. I grabbed my master key card and headed for the stairs, my mind racing. This could not be happening. There had to be an explanation. Maybe they were using a different exit. Maybe they were all here for some kind of extended business stay, and the reservations were just not updated properly. I started on the 4th floor with room 423. An elderly man named Thomas Blackwell had checked in on June 2nd. I knocked on the door, my hand trembling. Mr. Blackwell, this is hotel security. I need to verify your well-being. Nothing. I swiped my master key and pushed the door open slowly. The room was dark except for the glow from the digital clock on the nightstand. It read 3:42 a.m. Mr. Blackwell called out, reaching for the light switch. The lights came on, and I saw the room was immaculate. The bed was made with hospital corners. The bathroom was clean and unused. The closet was empty. There was no luggage, no personal items, no sign that anyone had ever stayed here. But the computer system showed the room as occupied. The keycard logs showed the door had been opened when he checked in and never opened again since. I backed out of the room, my heart hammering in my chest. I went to room 331. Same thing. Perfect cleanliness. I guess no belongings. Just an empty room that the computer insisted was occupied. Room 708, room 512, room 617. All the same. Empty rooms. No guests. But the system showed them all as occupied, and the security footage showed that once the guests entered, they never left. I ran back down to the lobby, nearly falling down the stairs in my panic. I burst through the door to the front desk area and grabbed the phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what is your emergency? My name is Marcus Webb. I am the night auditor at the Riverside Grand Hotel, I said, the words tumbling out. I need police here immediately. We have missing guests. 5 people checked in and never came out of their rooms. Can you confirm that these guests are missing, sir? The operator asked calmly. I checked their rooms. I said, they are empty, completely empty. But they never left. The security footage shows they went into their rooms and never came out. There was a pause. Sir, I am going to send officers to your location. Please stay on the line. 15 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. I led them through the hotel, showing them each room, explaining the security footage, the reservation system, everything. They checked each room thoroughly, took notes, asked questions. Mr. Webb, one of the officers said when we were back in the lobby, this is certainly unusual, but there could be explanations. Maybe these guests found another way out of the building. Maybe they climbed out windows or used the fire exits. The windows do not open, I said. They are sealed. And the fire exits have alarms that would have triggered. Maybe there is a glitch in your security system, the other officer suggested. Or they left during a period when the cameras were not recording. The cameras record continuously, I insisted. And I checked the entire timeline. They never left. The officers exchanged glances. We will file a report, the first officer said. In the meantime, I suggest you contact your manager and have them review the hotel systems. There is probably a technical explanation. After they left, I sat alone in the lobby as dawn began to break through the windows. I knew what I had seen. I knew those people had not left, but where had they gone? I called my manager, Patricia Holloway, and woke her up. I explained everything. She was skeptical, but agreed to come in early. While I waited for her, I did something I should have done hours ago. I searched for information about the hotel. The Riverside Grand Hotel opened in 1928, built by a real estate developer named James Cordell Whitmore. It was one of the finest hotels in the city, hosting presidents and movie stars during its golden age. But in 1953, something happened. I found a newspaper article from October 1953. The headline read, "Tragic fire claims 5 lives at Riverside Grand Hotel." My hands went numb as I read the article. On October 12, 1953, a fire broke out on the 4th floor of the hotel. 5 guests died in their rooms before the fire department could reach them. The fire was ruled accidental, caused by faulty wiring, but the hotel's reputation never recovered. It changed ownership several times over the decades, each owner trying and failing to restore it to its former glory. 5 guests. 5 deaths. 5 rooms where people had checked in but never checked out. Patricia arrived just after 8 a.m., looking tired and annoyed. "What is this about, Marcus?" she asked. I showed her everything. The reservation system, the security footage, the empty rooms, the newspaper article. She listened, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. "Marcus," she finally said, "how long have you been working night shift?" 3 years, I replied. "Why? Have you been sleeping enough?" "Shh. Because what you are describing sounds like exhaustion. Like maybe you are seeing patterns that are not there. I am not making this up, I said. Check the system yourself. She pulled up the reservation system and scrolled through the occupied rooms. Then she frowned. Marcus, she said slowly, all of these rooms show as vacant. There is nobody checked into 617 or 512 or any of the others you mentioned? That is impossible, I said, leaning over to look at the screen. But she was right. The system showed all 5 rooms as vacant and available for booking. You said you saw these people check in? Patricia asked. Yes, I said. Sarah Chen, Robert Hutchins. Processed their check-ins myself. Patricia pulled up the guest history and searched for both names. Nothing, she said. There is no record of anyone by those names staying here. Not this week. Not ever. I felt the room spin around me. That is impossible, I repeated. I have their signatures. I have security footage. Show me, Patricia said. We went to the security office and pulled up the footage from the night Sarah Chen checked in. I fast-forwarded to 2:15 a.m., right when I remembered her arriving. On the screen, I watched myself sitting at the front desk, working on the computer. The front door never opened. Nobody entered. No, I said, shaking my head. This is wrong. She was here. She stood right in front of me. Patricia put a hand on my shoulder. Marcus, I think you need to take some time off. You have been working too many overnight shifts. Your mind is playing tricks on you. I pulled away from her. I am not crazy, I said. Those people were here. They checked in. They went to their rooms. And now they are gone. Hey, Marcus, listen to me, Patricia said firmly. There is nobody missing. There is no security footage of these people. There are no reservations. You are exhausted, and you are seeing things that are not there. I am sending you home, and I want you to take the next week off. Paid leave. Get some rest. I wanted to argue, but looking at her face, I could see there was no point. She had made up her mind. I was the one who was wrong. I was the one who was losing it. I left the hotel in a daze, my mind refusing to accept what had just happened. I drove home on autopilot, barely remembering the route. When I got to my apartment, I collapsed on the couch and stared at the ceiling. Maybe Patricia was right. Maybe I had been working too much. Maybe the night shift had finally gotten to me. 3 years of overnight work, 3 years of living in a world where everyone else was asleep. Maybe it had broken something in my brain. But I could not shake the memory of Sarah Chen standing in front of me, her empty eyes staring into mine. I could not forget Robert Hutchins and the way he had looked at his keycard like it was a curse. They were real. I knew they were real. I spent the next 3 days in my apartment, barely sleeping, researching the hotel's history. I found more articles about the fire, about the 5 victims. Their names were listed. Margaret Brennan, room 423. David Torres, room 331. Elizabeth Moreno, room 708. James Park, room 512. And Catherine Walsh, room 617. The same rooms. The same exact rooms where my guests had stayed. On the 4th day, I went back to the hotel. It was late afternoon, and the lobby was bustling with check-ins and check-outs. I waited until Patricia was busy with a guest, then slipped past the front desk and took the stairs to the 6th floor. Room 617 looked the same as it had when I checked it with the police. Neat and clean. But as I stood in the doorway, I noticed something I had missed before. On the wall next to the bathroom, barely visible unless you were looking for it, was a dark stain. It was shaped like smoke damage, stretching up toward the ceiling. I went to room 512. Same thing. It's a dark stain on the wall, old smoke damage that had been painted over many times but never quite disappeared. Every room where a guest had died in 1953 had the same mark. I was standing in room 423, staring at the smoke stain, when I heard a voice behind me. You can see them, can you not? I spun around. An elderly woman was standing in the doorway, leaning on a walker. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with white hair pulled back in a tight bun and sharp blue eyes that seemed to look right through me. She wore a long gray coat despite the summer heat. There was something about her that reminded me of old photographs, as if she belonged to a different era. Who are you? I asked, my heart still racing from being startled. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, she said, her voice clear and strong despite her age. James Cordell Whitmore was my uncle. He built this hotel. How did you get in here? I asked. This room is supposed to be vacant. She smiled sadly. I have been coming to this hotel for 70 years, young man. I know every entrance, every stairway, every secret this building holds. I came tonight because I felt it happening again. I felt the hotel feeding. Feeding. I repeated, the word making my skin crawl. She hobbled into the room and sat down on the edge of the bed with a heavy sigh. Our hands gnarled with arthritis, gripped the walker tightly. My uncle built this hotel as a monument to himself, she said. He wanted it to last forever, to be remembered long after he was gone. But he made a terrible mistake. Many terrible mistakes. What mistakes? I asked, moving closer but maintaining some distance. Part of me still wondered if this elderly woman was even real, or if I was having some kind of breakdown. He cut corners on the construction, she replied, her eyes fixed on the smoke stain on the wall. He used cheap materials, hired unreliable contractors, ignored safety codes. The electrical wiring was substandard, installed by workers who barely knew what they were doing. The fire doors were decorative, not functional. The emergency exits were locked from the inside because he did not want guests sneaking out without paying. He wanted to save money so he could build it faster, open it sooner, make his fortune. And people died because of it, I said, remembering the newspaper article. She nodded slowly. 5 people burned to death in their rooms because the fire doors did not work properly, because the emergency exits were locked. Because my uncle cared more about profit than safety. I was 23 years old when it happened. I remember the night. I remember the sirens, the smoke, the screaming. I remember my uncle's face when he was told that 5 people had died. He did not show remorse. He showed annoyance, as if their deaths were an inconvenience that was going to cost him money. Eleanor paused, her hands trembling slightly on the walker. After the fire, he was ruined. The investigations revealed all his shortcuts, all his violations. He managed to avoid criminal charges through legal maneuvering and expensive lawyers, but his reputation was destroyed. Other developers would not work with him. Banks would not loan him money. His wife left him, taking their children. He died 5 years later, alone and bitter, his fortune gone, his legacy in ashes. I am sorry, I said, not knowing what else to say. Do not be sorry for him, Eleanor said sharply, looking up at me with those piercing blue eyes. Be sorry for his victims. Be sorry for Margaret Brennan and David Torres and Elizabeth, Moreno and James Park and Catherine Walsh. Be sorry for all the others who came after. The others? I asked. The hotel did not stop killing when the fire was extinguished, Eleanor said. If anything, the fire awakened something in it. Or maybe it created something, I am not sure which. But after 1953, people started disappearing. Not in fires, but in other ways. They would check in and never check out. Their families would search for them, but there would be no trace. The police would investigate and find nothing. It was as if the people had simply ceased to exist. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you have seen them, Eleanor said quietly. You have watched them check in. You have seen them walk to their rooms. And you have seen the rooms empty afterward, because they are not in the rooms anymore. They are in the hotel itself. Absorbed into the walls, into the foundation, into the very structure of the building. The hotel feeds on their despair, their hopelessness, their readiness to let go of life. It has been doing it for 70 years. I sank down onto the other bed, my legs giving out. This is impossible, I said weakly. Buildings do not eat people. Hotels do not have consciousness. This is insane. Is it? Eleanor asked. You have seen the evidence with your own eyes? You've watched people enter rooms and never emerge? You've seen the emptiness where they should be. You've felt the coldness, the darkness, the hunger. Tell me, Marcus, is it really so impossible? How do you know my name? I asked. I know everything about this hotel, she replied. Every night auditor who has worked here. Every guest who has stayed. Every person who has disappeared. I have been keeping records for 70 years, trying to warn people, trying to make them understand, but nobody listens. Nobody believes. They think I am just a crazy old woman telling ghost stories. There has to be a way to stop it, I said desperately. There has to be something we can do. Eleanor looked at me with infinite sadness in her eyes. The only way to stop it is to tear the hotel down, she said. To destroy it completely, reduce it to rubble, salt the earth where it stands. but nobody will do that. It is a historic building protected by a dozen different agencies and preservation societies. It has landmark status. It cannot be torn down without approval that would take years to obtain, if it could be obtained at all. Then what do we do? I asked. We cannot just let it keep taking people. We warned them, Eleanor said. We try to stop them from checking in. We do what little we can to interrupt the hunger. But ultimately the hotel will do what it wants. It is patient. It can wait decades between feedings if it must. And it always wins in the end. Sarah Chen, I said. Robert Hutchins. Are they gone? Are they really gone? Yes, Eleanor said softly. They are part of the hotel now. There's nothing you can do to bring them back. I sat there in silence, trying to process what she was telling me. It was insane. It was impossible. It was also the only explanation that made sense. What about me? I asked. Why can I see them when nobody else can? You work the night shift, Eleanor said. You are here when the hotel is at its most powerful, when the barriers between what is real and what is not are at their thinnest. You see things that the day shift never sees. And the hotel knows you can see. That makes you dangerous. Dangerous how? I asked. Because you might warn people, Eleanor said. You might tell them not to check in. You might try to stop the hotel from feeding. And the hotel cannot allow that. As if in response to her words, the lights in the room flickered. Then they went out completely, plunging us into darkness. I heard Eleanor gasp. It knows we are here, she whispered. We need to leave now. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the room. The smoke stain on the wall seemed darker now, spreading, growing larger as I watched. Come on, I said, helping Eleanor to her feet. We moved toward the door, but it slammed shut before we could reach it. I grabbed the handle and pulled, but it would not budge. It is too late, Eleanor said, her voice shaking. The hotel has decided we are not leaving.
Oh, we are not, I said.
I rammed my shoulder into the door, but it felt like hitting a concrete wall. The room was getting colder, and I could hear something. A sound like wind rushing through empty corridors, or like breathing deep and slow and ancient.
Ow.
Eleanor was backing away from the walls, her eyes wide with terror. It is coming, she whispered. The hotel is coming for us. The smoke stain was spreading across all the walls now, dark tendrils reaching out like fingers. The smell of burning wood filled the air, even though nothing was on fire. I could hear screaming in the distance, faint and desperate, the screams of people who had died here 70 years ago. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, but there was no signal. The screen flickered and went black. The hotel was cutting me off from the outside world. There has to be another way out, I said, looking around frantically. The window. We can break the window. The windows do not open, Eleanor said. You told the police that yourself? Then we will break it, I replied. I grabbed the desk chair and swung it at the window with all my strength. The chair bounced off the glass like it was hitting rubber, not even a crack. The darkness was closing in around us now, the walls seeming to lean inward. The temperature had dropped so far that I could see my breath. Eleanor was praying quietly, her eyes closed, her lips moving rapidly. I'm sorry, I whispered. I am sorry I brought you here. I'm sorry I did not believe you sooner. It is not your fault, Eleanor replied, opening her eyes. The hotel would have found a way eventually. It always does. The darkness reached out and touched my arm, and I felt something I will never be able to adequately describe. It was like being erased, like feeling yourself dissolve into nothing. The cold was absolute, beyond anything I had ever experienced. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The lights came back on. The door swung open. The darkness retreated back into the walls. I was standing in room 423, alone and gasping for breath. Eleanor was gone. I ran from the room, down the hallway, down the stairs, through the lobby, and out into the parking lot. I did not stop until I was in my car with the doors locked, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I looked back at the hotel. It stood there in the afternoon sun, solid and ordinary, just an old building. But I knew the truth now. I knew what it was and what it did. And I knew that Eleanor Whitmore had just become its latest victim. I drove to the police station and tried to file a report. They listened politely and took notes, but I could see in their eyes that they thought I was crazy. I went to the city planning office and asked about demolishing the hotel. They told me it was a protected historic landmark and could not be torn down without approval from a dozen different agencies. A process that would take years if it happened at all. I did not quit immediately. I could not. Part of me refused to abandon the hotel, refused to let it keep claiming victims without someone there to witness, to remember, to fight back. So I returned to work the next night, despite every instinct screaming at me to run. Patricia was surprised to see me. "I thought you needed time off," she said, looking concerned. "I changed my mind," I replied. "I need to work. I need to keep busy." She studied my face for a long moment. "If you are sure," she said finally. "But Marcus, if you need to talk to someone, we have an employee assistance program. Free counseling. No judgment." "I am fine," I lied. "Just fine." That night I made a decision. I would document everything. Every guest who checked in after midnight, I would record their information in a private notebook. Names, room numbers, times. If they disappeared like the others, at least someone would have a record. At least someone would know they had existed. The first week was quiet. Normal check-ins, normal check-outs, business travelers, tourists, a couple celebrating their anniversary. Nobody went to the 5 cursed rooms. Nobody disappeared. I began to wonder if the hotel had gone dormant, if somehow Eleanor's sacrifice had satisfied its hunger for a while. But on the 8th night she walked in. Her name was Diane Foster, and she looked like she'd been crying for hours. Her mascara was smeared down her cheeks. Her hands shook as she handed me her credit card. She was maybe 30 years old, blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt. "Just one night," she whispered. "I just need one night away from everything." "Of course," I said gently. "Let me find you a comfortable room." I pulled up the availability and felt my stomach drop. The system was steering me toward room 617. The cursor was moving on its own, selecting that room as if the hotel itself was making the choice. I fought against it, manually selecting a different room on the 2nd floor, a safe room, a room with no history. But when I hit confirm, the system changed it. Room 617 populated in the reservation field. Try it again. Same result. The hotel wanted her in that room, and it was not going to let me interfere. "Is something wrong?" Diane asked, noticing my hesitation. I looked at her tear-stained face, at the pain in her eyes, and I made a choice. "Miss Foster," I said quietly, "I am going to be honest with you. I do not think you should stay here tonight." She blinked in surprise. "What?" "This hotel," I continued, lowering my voice even though we were alone in the lobby. "There is something wrong with it. Something dangerous. Please, go somewhere else." "Anywhere else." Her expression hardened. "I need a room," she said. "Are you going to give me one, or not?" "Miss Foster, please listen to me," I urged. "People have disappeared from this hotel. People who were in pain, who were desperate, who needed help. The hotel takes them, feeds on them. Please do not stay here." She stared at me for a long moment, then snatched her credit card off the counter. "You are insane," she said, backing away. "I am calling another hotel." She turned and walked toward the exit, and I felt a surge of relief. I had saved her. I had actually saved someone, but then she stopped. Her hand was on the door handle, but she was not pushing it. She stood there, frozen for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, she turned around and walked back to the desk. "Give me a room," she said flatly. Her voice had changed, distant, hollow, exactly like Sarah Chen's had. "Miss Foster," I pleaded, "please do not do this. Give me a room," she repeated, and this time I heard something else beneath her words, something old, something hungry, something that was not Diane Foster. My hands moved on their own, processing her check-in. I watched myself hand her the key card to room 617. I watched her take it and walk toward the elevators without another word. I watched the elevator doors close behind her. I knew I had just witnessed another person being claimed by the Riverside Grand Hotel. I called the police immediately. I told them everything, begged them to check on Diane Foster in room 617. They said they would send someone. Hours later, an officer arrived. I led him to the 6th floor. We knocked on the door. No answer. We used my master key to open it. The room was empty, perfectly clean. No sign of Diane Foster. No luggage, no personal items, nothing. Maybe she already checked out, the officer suggested. I showed him the security footage. We watched Diane Foster enter the room at 11:42 p.m. The door never opened again. The officer checked the fire exit at the end of the hall. The alarm was armed and had not been triggered. The window did not open. This is very strange, the officer admitted. But without evidence of foul play, there is nothing I can do. Maybe she found another way out. Maybe your cameras have a blind spot. After he left, I sat in the lobby and cried. I had tried to warn her. I had tried to save her, but the hotel was too strong. It had wanted her, and nothing I could do would have stopped it. I added her name to my notebook. Diane Foster. Room 617. Checked in 11:38 p.m., never checked out. 3 nights later, a man named Christopher Valdez checked into room 331. I tried to warn him, too. He looked at me like I was crazy and went to his room anyway. By morning, he was gone. The room was empty. The system showed no record of him ever being there. I started leaving notes in the cursed rooms. Warning signs. Handwritten please, telling anyone who entered to leave immediately, to not spend the night, to get out while they still could. Housekeeping found them and threw them away. Patricia called me into her office and told me to stop frightening the guests. She was worried about me, she said. She thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Maybe I was. Maybe watching people disappear into nothing, one after another, month after month, had broken something fundamental in my mind. But I could not stop. I could not walk away. Because if I did, who would remember them? Who would know they had existed? I started researching James Cordell Whitmore more deeply. I went to the library and dug through old newspapers on microfiche. I found articles about the hotel's construction, about Whitmore's business practices, about the corner cutting and the safety violations. But I found something else too, something that made my blood run cold. Before the Riverside Grand was built, something else stood on that site. It's an old boarding house called the Mercy Arms. And in 1903, 25 years before the hotel was built, something terrible had happened there. A fire, just like the one at the Riverside Grand. But this fire killed 12 people. 12 residents trapped in their rooms as the building burned around them. The boarding house was demolished, and the site sat empty for years until James Cordell Whitmore bought it and built his hotel. The same ground. The same cursed ground. 17 people had died in fires on that exact spot. 17 people burned alive in their rooms. I did the math. 5 from the hotel. 12 from the boarding house. 17 total. I went through my notebook, counting the guests I had watched disappear over the past months. 17 names. 17 people who had checked in and never checked out. The hotel was not just feeding randomly, it was recreating the deaths. It was trying to reach 17 victims, the same number who had died in the fires. And I had just watched victim number 17 disappear 3 nights ago. I thought maybe that meant it was over. Maybe the hotel had satisfied whatever dark hunger drove it. Maybe it would go dormant again, sleep for another 70 years. I was wrong. The very next night, a young couple checked in. Newlyweds on their honeymoon. They were happy, laughing, so full of life. The system assigned them to room 708. I tried everything. I offered them a free upgrade to the penthouse suite. I told them that room had bed bugs, claimed there was a plumbing problem. But they wanted room 708, they insisted. And when I looked in their eyes, I saw that same emptiness, that same void. The hotel had already claimed them before they even walked through the door. By morning, they were gone. The room was empty. Their car was still in the parking lot, but they had vanished completely. That was when I understood the horrible truth. The hotel was not satisfied with 17 victims. It was never going to be satisfied. It would keep feeding forever, keep claiming guests, keep growing stronger with each soul it consumed. I quit my job at the Riverside Grand that night. I told Patricia I had a family emergency and could not return. She did not ask questions. For 3 weeks, I tried to put it behind me. I found a new job working at a 24-hour convenience store on the other side of town. I saw a therapist who prescribed medication for anxiety and PTSD. I tried to convince myself that Eleanor had been a hallucination, that the whole thing had been a stress-induced breakdown. But then I saw her on the news. A woman named Jennifer Park had disappeared from her home 3 days ago. She had left a note saying she was checking into a hotel downtown for some time alone to think. Her family was worried. The police were investigating. I knew which hotel she had gone to. I knew which room she would be in, room 512. It's the same room where James Park had died in 1953. I wanted to go back. I wanted to try to save her. But I knew it was already too late. She checked into the Riverside Grand. Once you walked into one of those 5 rooms, you were part of the hotel forever. But I could not just do nothing. I drove to Jennifer Park's house and waited outside until her husband came home. He looked exhausted, beaten down by worry. I approached him as he was getting out of his car. "Mr. Park," I said, "my name is Marcus Webb. I need to talk to you about your wife." He turned to me with desperate eyes. "Do you know where she is? Have you seen her?" "I think she went to the Riverside Grand Hotel," I said. "And I think she is in terrible danger." He stared at me. "The police already checked there," he said. "They said there was no record of her staying there. No one matching her description had checked in." "The hotel erases its victims from the records," I explained, knowing how insane it sounded. "It makes it so they never existed." "But I worked there. Have been watching people disappear for months. Your wife is not the first. She will not be the last." His expression changed from hope to anger. "Get away from me," he said. "My wife is missing, and you come here with some crazy conspiracy theory? Get off my property before I call the police." "Mr. Park, please," I begged. "Check her credit card statements. Check her phone records. You will see she went to that hotel. And once you see that, you need to make the police take this seriously. You need to make them investigate." He pulled out his phone. "I am calling the police right now," he said. "You need to leave." I left before the police arrived. I had tried. I had tried to make someone listen. But it was not enough. It was never enough. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Jennifer Park, about her standing at a window in room 512, trapped forever. I thought about all the others. Sarah Chen, Robert Hutchins, Diane Foster, Christopher Valdez. The newlywed couple whose names I never learned. All of them trapped in the walls of the Riverside Grand. I decided I had to try one more time. Had to go back to the hotel and find a way to stop it, or at least to understand it better. Maybe if I understood how it worked, I could find a weakness. Maybe I could find a way to free the people it had taken. I drove to the hotel at 3 in the morning. The parking lot was nearly empty. I parked across the street and watched the building for an hour, working up my courage. The windows were dark except for a few scattered rooms where guests were still awake. On the 6th floor, room 617 had a light on. A figure stood at the window, motionless. Sarah Chen, still there, still trapped. I crossed the street and entered through the side door that the staff used. I still had my employee key card. It worked. I made my way to the basement, to the maintenance area where the original blueprints and building records were stored. The basement was cold and damp, filled with the smell of mold and rust. I found the records room and started searching through old filing cabinets. Most of the files were mundane, maintenance logs and repair orders and supply invoices. But in the back of the last cabinet, I found something different. A leather-bound journal. Pages were yellowed with age, the handwriting barely legible, but I could make out the name on the first page. James Cordell Whitmore. I sat down on the cold concrete floor and began to read by the light of my phone. The journal detailed the construction of the hotel, but it was not a typical construction log. Whitmore wrote about his obsession with making the hotel permanent, with making it last forever. He wrote about strange consultations with people he called practitioners, and about rituals performed during the construction. On the site of great tragedy, he wrote, "Power accumulates. Death leaves echoes. I have built my hotel on such a site, and I have woven those echoes into its very foundation. The Riverside Grand will never truly die. It will stand for centuries, fed by the same forces that destroyed what came before." The entries became more disturbing as I read further. Whitmore described the fire at the Mercy Arms boarding house, the 12 people who died there. He did not sound sad or regretful. He sounded excited, fascinated. 12 souls remained bound to the earth, he wrote. I could feel them in the ground as we dug the foundation, angry, hungry. I've given them a new home, a new form. The hotel will be their body, and they will give it life. I felt sick reading his words. He had not just built the hotel on cursed ground. He had deliberately tried to trap the spirits of the dead inside it. He had wanted to create something supernatural, something that would outlive him. And when the fire happened in 1953, killing 5 more people, it had only made the hotel stronger. 17 trapped souls. 17 sources of power, 17 people feeding the building's hunger. The last entry in the journal was dated October 13th, 1953, the day after the fire. "It worked," Whitmore wrote. "The ritual is complete. The hotel has awakened. I have achieved immortality. Not through my own life, but through the life of my creation. The Riverside Grand will stand forever, and my name will be remembered." But his excitement was mixed with something else. Fear. "I went to the hotel last night," he continued. "I walked through the halls where 5 people died. I could feel them watching me. I could hear them whispering. They know what I did. They know I caused their deaths through my negligence, my greed. They are angry." The final line sent chills down my spine. "I am afraid to sleep in my own creation. I am afraid of what it might do to me." 5 years later, Whitmore was dead. I remembered what Eleanor had said about him dying a broken man. But now I wondered if his death had been natural at all. Maybe the hotel had claimed its creator the way it claimed everyone else who stayed too long. I took photos of the journal pages with my phone and left the basement. I had what I needed. Proof. Evidence that the hotel was not just haunted but deliberately designed to be a prison for the dead. But who would believe me? Who would take action based on the ramblings of a dead man in a century-old journal? I decided to go to the media. If the authorities would not listen, maybe public pressure would force them to investigate. I contacted a local news station and told them I had a story about the Riverside Grand Hotel. They agreed to meet with me. The reporter's name was Amanda Chen. When she introduced herself, I felt a jolt of recognition. Chen. The same last name as Sarah, the first guest I had watched disappear. "Are you related to Sarah Chen?" I asked. She looked surprised. "That is my sister," she said. "She disappeared 6 months ago. The police said she probably left town voluntarily." "Why do you ask?" "It's because I think I know what happened to her," I said. I told Amanda everything. About the night Sarah checked in, about the empty rooms, about all the others who had disappeared, about the journal I had found in the basement. She listened, her expression shifting from skepticism to horror as I showed her the photos on my phone. When I finished, she was silent for a long time. "My family has been looking for Sarah for 6 months, she finally said. "The police told us she had maxed out her credit cards and was probably trying to start over somewhere new. But I never believed that. Sarah was not that kind of person." "She was in pain," I said gently. I could see it in her eyes. "The hotel targets people who are desperate, who are broken. It calls to them somehow." Amanda wiped tears from her eyes. "Sarah had just gone through a divorce," she said. "She lost custody of her daughter. She was devastated. She told me she needed time to think, to figure out her life, and then she just vanished. She checked into the Riverside Grand," I said. "Room 617. I processed her check-in myself, and I watched her walk to the elevator. I never saw her again. "Can we go there?" Amanda asked. "Can we go to the hotel right now? I need to see this for myself." I hesitated. "It is dangerous," I said. "The hotel does not like people who try to interfere. Eleanor Whitmore disappeared because she tried to warn me. If we go back there, we might not come out." "I do not care," Amanda said fiercely. "If my sister is trapped in that place, I need to try to help her. Will you come with me?" I thought about refusing. I thought about telling her to go alone, to leave me out of it. But I could not. Sarah Chen's empty eyes haunted me. If there was even the smallest chance we could do something to help her, I had to try. We drove to the Riverside Grand together. It was 4 a.m, the darkest part of the night. The hotel looked different in the pre-dawn darkness, more menacing, more alive. Lights flickered in random windows. The building seemed to breathe. "Are you sure about this?" asked Amanda as we sat in the car, staring up at the hotel. "No," she admitted. "But I am going in anyway." We entered through the main door. The night auditor at the desk looked up in surprise. It was a young woman I had never seen before. They must have hired someone new after I left. "Can I help you?" she asked. "We need to check on someone in room 617, Amanda said. "I am sorry, but I cannot give out information about our guests," the auditor replied professionally. "My sister's in that room," Amanda insisted. "I need to see her." The auditor checked the computer. I am sorry, ma'am, but room 617 is vacant. There's nobody staying there. Check your records from 6 months ago, I said. June 20th, Sarah-chan. The auditor typed on her keyboard, then frowned. There's no record of anyone by that name staying here, she said. Because the hotel erases them, I said. It makes them disappear from the system, but they are still here, trapped in the building. The auditor's professional demeanor cracked slightly. Sir, I am going to have to ask you to leave. You are disturbing the peace. Call Patricia Holloway, I said. Tell her Marcus Webb is here. She knows who I am. The auditor picked up the phone and made the call. A few minutes later, Patricia came down from her apartment on the top floor, wearing a bathrobe and looking furious. Marcus, what are you doing here? She demanded. I thought we agreed you would not come back. This woman's sister disappeared from this hotel 6 months ago, I said, gesturing to Amanda. I watched it happen. And you know, I am telling the truth, Patricia. You have seen the irregularities in the system. You know something is wrong here. Patricia's face went pale. I do not know what you are talking about, she said, but her voice wavered. Yes, you do, I pressed. How many times have you noticed guests in the system who never check out? How many times have you found rooms occupied with no one inside? How many times have you had that feeling that something is not right about this place? She looked away. That is just computer glitches, she said weakly. No, I said, it is not. And you know it. People are dying here, Patricia. They are being trapped here. And you are helping it happen by refusing to acknowledge the truth. Patricia's composure finally broke. Do you think I do not know? She shouted, tears streaming down her face. Do you think I have not noticed? I've worked here for 15 years, Marcus. It's 15 years. And I have watched people disappear. I have seen the rooms that never empty. I have felt the hotel watching me. Then help us, Amanda pleaded. Help us find my sister. Help us stop this. Patricia shook her head. You cannot stop it, she said. The hotel is too strong. I tried once, years ago. I tried to investigate, to find answers, and the hotel made me pay for it. It took my husband. He checked into room 423 and he never came out. The police found nothing. The cameras showed nothing. One day he was there, and the next day it was like he never existed. I am so sorry, I said. So am I, Patricia replied bitterly. But I learned my lesson. I do not ask questions anymore. I do my job. I take my paycheck, and I try not to think about what happens in those 5 rooms. We need to go up there, Amanda said. We need to try. Patricia looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. If you go up there, you might not come back, she warned. The hotel does not like people who interfere. It will try to take you. I know, Amanda said, but she is my sister. Patricia reached into her pocket and pulled out a master key card. Room 617, she said, handing it to me. But do not say, I did not warn you. Took the elevator to the 6th floor. The hallway was silent and dim, lit only by emergency lights at each end. The carpet muffled our footsteps as we walked toward room 617. The door looked ordinary, just another hotel room door. But standing in front of it, I could feel something emanating from inside, a coldness, a hunger, a presence. Amanda reached for the door handle, but I stopped her. Wait, I said, before we go in, I need you to understand something. Whatever we find in there, it might not be your sister anymore. Not really. The hotel changes people. It absorbs them. I understand, Amanda said, though I could see the fear in her eyes. I swiped the master keycard and pushed the door open. The room beyond was dark, but not empty. I could feel the presence of something inside, something watching us. I reached for the light switch, but Amanda grabbed my arm. Do you hear that? She whispered. I listened. At first I heard nothing. Then, gradually, I became aware of a sound, breathing, slow and deep, coming from somewhere inside the room. But it was not the breathing of one person. It was dozens of breaths, all synchronized, all moving in and out together. The hotel, I realized. We were hearing the hotel breathe. Amanda pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the room. It looked normal at first, a bed neatly made, a desk and chair, a television mounted on the wall. But then I saw the walls. They were moving. The wallpaper seemed to pulse. expanding and contracting with each breath. And within the pattern, I could see shapes. Faces, dozens of faces pressed against the surface from the inside, their mouths open in silent screams. "Oh my God," Amanda whispered. "Sarah, I can see her." "Where?" I asked, though part of me did not want to know. Amanda moved closer to the far wall, her phone light shaking in her trembling hand. "There," she said, pointing. "That is her. I know her face." I looked where she was pointing and saw a face that looked like the woman I had checked in 6 months ago. But the features were distorted, stretched as if she was being pulled from the inside. Her eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. "Sarah," Amanda called out. "Sarah, can you hear me?" The breathing stopped. The entire room went silent. Then, slowly, all the faces in the walls turned toward us. Dozens of trapped souls, all looking at the 2 living people standing in their prison. Amanda stepped back, nearly dropping her phone. "They are all in there," she whispered. "All the missing people are all trapped in the walls." "We need to get them out," I said, though I had no idea how. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly. My breath came out in visible clouds. The door behind us slammed shut, and I heard the lock engage. "It knows we are here," I said. "The hotel knows." The faces in the walls began to move, pressing forward as if trying to break through. I could hear them now, not with my ears, but in my mind. Voices whispering, pleading, screaming, hundreds of voices all crying out at once. "Help us. Free us. We are trapped. We cannot leave. Please, help us." Amanda was crying now, pressing her hands against the wall where her sister's face was visible. "I am here, Sarah," she sobbed. "I am here. I did not forget you." The wall beneath her hands grew warm, then hot. She pulled back with a gasp. The wallpaper where she had touched began to blacken and peel, revealing the original wall beneath. And carved into that wall in letters that looked like they had been scratched by fingernails were words. "Burn IT down." I stared at the message, my mind racing. Eleanor had said the only way to stop the hotel was to destroy it. The fire in 1953 had not worked because it had not destroyed the building completely. But what if we could finish the job? What if we could burn the hotel to the ground? "Man," I said urgently. "We need to get out of here. Then we need to burn this place down." She looked at me with tear-streaked eyes. "Will that free them?" "I do not know," I admitted. "But it is the only chance they have." We turned toward the door, but it would not open. Swiped the keycard repeatedly. Nothing. The electronic lock was dead. We were trapped. "The hotel is not going to let us leave," Amanda said, panic rising in her voice. "Then we break the window," I replied, grabbing the desk chair. I swung the chair at the window with all my strength. It bounced off the glass without leaving a scratch, just as it had when I tried this before. The window was unbreakable. The walls were closing in now, literally. The room was getting smaller. The faces in the wallpaper were pressing harder, their features becoming more defined. I could see their hands now, reaching through the wall, grasping at the air. "Marcus, what do we do?" Amanda cried. "I do not know," I admitted. "I do not know how to fight this." But then I remembered something from Whitmore's journal. The hotel was built on a ritual. It was powered by the trapped souls. But rituals could be broken. It could be reversed. I pulled out my phone and quickly typed out a message to Patricia. "Send help. Send fire department. Tell them there is a fire on the 6th floor. Do it now." I had no signal, but I tried anyway, hoping the message would somehow get through. "We need to create a fire," I told Amanda, "a real one. If we can start a fire in this room, maybe it will trigger the sprinkler system. Maybe it will give us a chance." "With what?" Amanda asked, looking around the room desperately. I remembered I had a lighter in my pocket. I always carried one, a habit from my smoking days years ago. I pulled it out and looked around for something to burn. The curtains. It would work. I flicked the lighter and held the flame to the curtain fabric. It caught immediately, spreading faster than I expected. Within seconds, the entire curtain was ablaze, bright orange flames licking up toward the ceiling. The sprinkler system activated, water raining down from the ceiling. But instead of extinguishing the fire, the flames seemed to grow stronger. The water turned to steam before it could reach the burning curtain, hissing and evaporating in the intense heat. The hotel was protecting itself, I realized. It was not going to let us destroy it. But something else was happening. The faces in the walls were changing. They were moving toward the fire, drawn to it like moths to light. The wallpaper around the burning curtain began to bubble and char, and I could see the faces pressing harder, trying to break through the surface. "I want to be free," Amanda said, understanding dawning on her face. "The fire can free them." But we could not let the fire spread too far, or we would be trapped in a burning room with no way out. We needed to escape first. I grabbed Amanda's hand and pulled her toward the door. I kicked it as hard as I could, again and again, my foot slamming into the wood. On the fifth kick, I felt something give. The lock broke with a crack, and the door swung open. We ran into the hallway, coughing from the smoke that was already billowing out of room 617. The fire was spreading faster than I had anticipated, already creeping along the walls of the corridor. "We need to get everyone out," I said, gasping for breath. "There are other guests. Cannot let them get trapped." We ran from door to door, pounding on each one and shouting for people to evacuate. Sleepy guests emerged in their pajamas and robes, confused and frightened. Some were angry at being woken up until they smelled the smoke and saw the flames spreading down the hallway. "Go to the stairs," I shouted. "Do not use the elevators. Get out of the building now." Within minutes, the hallway was filled with panicked guests, all heading for the emergency exits. Amanda and I made sure every door on the 6th floor was checked, every room evacuated. The smoke was getting thicker, burning my lungs with each breath. "We need to go," Amanda said, pulling at my arm. "We need to get out now." We ran for the stairs and practically flew down the 6 flights to the ground floor. Patricia was already in the lobby, directing people outside, her face white with fear. When she saw us emerge from the stairwell, her eyes widened in shock. "What did you do?" she demanded, grabbing my shoulders. "Ah! What you were too afraid to do," I replied, coughing. "I'm ending this." The fire department arrived within 10 minutes, their sirens wailing in the pre-dawn darkness. Firefighters rushed into the building with their equipment, but the fire had already spread through the entire 6th floor and was working its way down to the 5th. They fought it for hours, but the old building burned hot and fast, the decades-old wood and plaster feeding the flames like kindling. Amanda and I stood across the street with the other evacuated guests and hotel staff, watching the Riverside Grand burn. The flames were visible through every window on the upper floors, orange and red light dancing in the darkness. And in those flames, I swear I could see shapes moving, figures walking through the fire, finally free from their prison. I could not see the faces anymore, but I hoped they were finally at peace. I hoped Sarah and all the others had found release in the flames. Patricia was standing nearby, wrapped in a blanket someone had given her. Her face was wet with tears, but there was something else in her expression too. Relief, maybe even joy. "It is over," she said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. Finally, it is over. The fire burned through the night and into the morning. By the time the sun rose, casting golden light across the city, the Riverside Grand Hotel was nothing but a smoking shell.
Oh.
The walls still stood blackened and crumbling, but the interior was completely gutted. 7 stories of history and horror reduced to ash and rubble. The fire investigators spent weeks examining the scene. Their conclusion was that it had been caused by faulty wiring in room 617. The same room where Catherine Walsh had died in the 1953 fire. No charges were filed. No one was held responsible. It was ruled an unfortunate accident in an old building with outdated electrical systems. The building was too damaged to repair, and the city condemned it for demolition. Insurance companies fought over who would pay for the cleanup. The property changed hands twice before anyone agreed to take responsibility. 3 months later, they finally tore down what was left of the Riverside Grand Hotel. I watched from across the street as the wrecking crews brought down the remaining walls. Each crash of concrete and steel felt like another weight lifting from my shoulders. When the last wall fell and all that remained was an empty lot filled with broken rubble, I felt like I could breathe properly for the first time in months. Amanda and I stayed in touch after everything was over. She told me that the night of the fire, after we had all been sent home and the building was still burning, she had the strangest experience. She fell asleep in her apartment and dreamed of Sarah. In the dream, Sarah looked the way she used to before the divorce, before the custody battle, before the despair that had driven her to the Riverside Grand. She was smiling, peaceful, whole again. She hugged Amanda and thanked her for setting her free. She said she was finally at peace, that all of them were finally at peace. When I woke up, Amanda told me, I felt different, lighter somehow. Like a weight I did not even know I was carrying had been lifted. I think she really is free now. I think they all are. I hoped she was right. I hoped that burning down the hotel had broken whatever dark ritual had bound those souls to that place. I hoped they had found peace in whatever comes after this life. The empty lot where the Riverside Grand once stood remained empty for years. The property changed hands several times, but nobody wanted to develop it. Real estate agents claimed the ground was unstable, that the old foundations were compromised and would be too expensive to remove. But I knew the real reason. The land itself was still cursed, still hungry, still waiting. Sometimes, late at night, I would drive past that empty lot and park across the street. I would sit in my car and watch the shadows that moved across the bare ground where the hotel had stood. Figures that looked almost human, standing where the lobby used to be, where the elevators had carried guests to their rooms, where people had checked in but never checked out. I told myself they were just my imagination, just shadows cast by passing cars and streetlights. But deep down, I knew better. Some stains go too deep to wash away. Some curses cannot be broken by fire alone. Patricia eventually moved away from the city. She sent me a letter 6 months after the fire, telling me she had taken a job managing a small bed and breakfast in Vermont. It is so different here, she wrote. The building is new, the guests are friendly, and nobody disappears. I can finally sleep at night without nightmares. I was happy for her. She deserved peace after everything the hotel had put her through, after losing her husband to its insatiable hunger. I hoped Vermont treated her kindly. As for me, I never went back to working nights. I found a day job at an accounting firm. Regular hours in a regular office, with regular people who had no idea about hotels that eat souls or buildings that breathe. Sometimes my coworkers would ask why I never stayed at hotels when I traveled, why I always looked for other accommodations, no matter how inconvenient. I never told them the truth. How could I? They would think I was crazy. So I made up excuses about preferring home rentals or staying with friends. They accepted my quirks and moved on, never knowing that I carried the memories of 17 people who had walked into a building and never walked out. The nightmares faded over time, just like my therapist said they would. I stopped waking up screaming, stopped seeing faces in the walls of my apartment, stopped feeling the cold darkness reaching for me in the night. But I never forgot. I could never forget. Every year on the anniversary of the fire, I visit the empty lot where the Riverside Grand once stood. I stand at the edge of the property and say the names of the people I remember. Sarah Chen, Robert Hutchins, Diane Foster, Christopher Valdez, Eleanor Whitmore, Jennifer Park. The newlyweds whose names I never learned, and all the others whose names I recorded in my notebook, but whose faces have faded from my memory. I say their names so someone will remember, so they will not be completely erased from the world, so their families will know that someone witnessed their disappearance, someone cared, someone tried to help. And then I leave flowers. 17 flowers, one for each victim I knew about. I place them on the ground where the lobby used to be, and I hope that wherever they are now, they know they are not forgotten. Some hotels are more than buildings. Some hotels are alive. Some hotels are hungry, and some hotels never let you check out. I still drive past it sometimes late at night when the streets are empty. I park across the street and watch the windows. On the 6th floor, in room 617, I can sometimes see a figure standing at the window, a woman with auburn hair. She stands there for hours, motionless, staring out at the city. I want to believe it is not Sarah Chen. I want to believe she found peace somehow, but I know better. She is still there, trapped in that room, part of the hotel forever. Last week I saw a man walking toward the entrance of the Riverside Grand at 2 a.m. He was carrying a small overnight bag, walking with his head down. I rolled down my window and shouted at him to stop, to turn around, to go anywhere else. He looked at me for just a moment, and I saw his eyes. Empty, hopeless, already gone. He walked through the front door, and I knew I would never see him again.
Not really.
Maybe his family would report him missing.
Maybe they would search for him.
Because he was already gone, absorbed into the walls of the Riverside Grand Hotel? Just another guest who checked in but never checked out? I have thought about burning it down. I've thought about sneaking in with gasoline and matches and destroying the whole building. But I know it would not work. The fire in 1953 did not stop it. If anything, it made the hotel stronger. Gave it a taste for death that it has never lost. So all I can do is warn people. Tell them the story. Hope that someone listens, because the Riverside Grand is still open for business. It still takes reservations, and it is still hungry. The hotel sits there on the edge of downtown waiting. It's always waiting. For the next person who is lost enough, desperate enough, broken enough to walk through those doors. For the next guest who will check in and never check out. I think about the people I have watched disappear. Sarah Chen with her empty eyes. Robert Hutchins with his expensive suit and his regret. Eleanor Whitmore, who tried to warn me and paid the price. Jennifer Park, who is probably standing at a window right now, staring out at a world she can no longer be part of. I think about them, and I wonder how many others there have been over the past 70 years. How many people have walked into the Riverside Grand and never walked out? 50? 100? More? How many families are still searching for loved ones who simply vanished, never knowing that they are trapped in an old hotel, part of its structure now, feeding its endless hunger? Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and I can still feel the cold darkness reaching for me. I can still smell the burning wood. I can still hear the screaming. And I wonder if I really escaped, or if part of me is still there in room 423, dissolving into nothingness. The Riverside Grand Hotel is still operating. If you search for it online, you will find mostly positive reviews. Guests comment on the historic charm, the art deco, architecture, the affordable rates. Nobody mentions the 5 rooms. Nobody mentions the guests who never check out, because the hotel makes sure they forget. It erases them from memory, from records, from reality itself. But I remember. I remember all of them. I carry their stories with me, a weight I cannot put down, because someone has to remember. Someone has to bear witness. Someone has to tell the truth about what happens when you check into the Riverside Grand Hotel. So if you are planning a trip to this city, if you are looking for a place to stay, please, I am begging you, choose somewhere else. Stay at a modern chain hotel with bright lights and security cameras and people everywhere. Stay at a bed and breakfast run by a nice couple who will cook you breakfast in the morning. Stay anywhere else, because the Riverside Grand is waiting. It is always waiting. And once you walk through those doors, once you take that key card and ride the elevator up to your room, once you close that door behind you, you are not coming back. You will become part of something ancient and hungry, something that has been feeding on human despair for 7 decades. I still have nightmares about that night in room 423, about the darkness closing in, about Eleanor disappearing in front of me, about the feeling of being erased, of feeling yourself dissolve into nothing. I wake up screaming, covered in sweat, my heart racing. My therapist says the nightmares will fade with time. She says trauma responses lessen as we process the events. But she does not understand. She thinks I had a psychotic break, that what I experienced was not real. She does not believe in hotels that eat people, in buildings with memories, in darkness that reaches out and erases you from existence. But I know the truth. And the truth is that the Riverside Grand Hotel is still there, still open, still taking reservations. Right now, as I am telling you this, someone might be walking through those doors. Someone lost, someone desperate, someone ready to give up. And the hotel will welcome them with open arms, lead them to their room, and make sure they never leave. I tried to get the city to investigate. I filed reports with the fire marshal, with building inspections, with anyone who would listen. I showed them the newspaper articles from 1953. I explained about the 5 rooms, about the guests who disappeared. They thanked me for my concern and did nothing. The hotel has protected status. It is a historic landmark. It cannot be touched. So it continues. Day after day, night after night, the Riverside Grand stands there, waiting for the next victim. And I sit here in my small apartment, watching the shadows grow longer, wondering if it will come for me eventually. Wondering if my escape was permanent or just temporary. Wondering if one night I will wake up to find the darkness reaching through my walls, The hotel finally claiming the one who got away. I keep the lights on all night now. I have not slept in complete darkness since that night in room 423. I have moved 3 times in the past 6 months, always to apartments that face the sunrise, always to buildings that are new and modern with no history, no memories, no ghosts. But I can still feel it sometimes. On quiet nights, when the world is asleep, I can feel the hotel thinking about me, remembering me. I can feel its hunger across the distance, and I know that one day it will call me back. One day, I will find myself walking toward those doors again, unable to resist, drawn by something older and stronger than my will. When that day comes, I will become another guest who checked in but never checked out. Another story that nobody believes, another memory erased from the world. And the hotel will continue, eternal and patient, waiting for the next desperate soul who needs a room for the night. So please, if you remember nothing else from this story, remember this. If you see a beautiful old Art Deco hotel called the Riverside Grand, if you are tempted by its historic charm and affordable rates, if you think about booking a room for the night, do not. Turn around. Walk away. Find somewhere else to stay. Because some hotels are more than buildings. Some hotels have appetites, and some hotels never let their guests leave. The Riverside Grand is waiting. It is always waiting, and it is always hungry. My name is Marcus Webb, and I survived the Riverside Grand Hotel, but I am one of the lucky ones. Most people do not survive. Most people check in and never check out. Their families search for them. The police investigate. But they never find anything because there is nothing to find. The people are gone, absorbed into the walls, part of the hotel forever. I am telling you this because I do not want you to be next. I do not want another family crying on the news, begging for information about their missing loved one. I do not want another person to feel what I felt in that room, that absolute cold, that sense of being erased from existence. Stay away from the Riverside Grand Hotel, please. Just stay away. Because if you do not, you will become part of its story. You'll become another ghost in its walls. You'll become another guest who checked in but never checked out. And nobody will remember you except me. Nobody will know the truth except me. And I will carry your memory along with all the others. A collection of stories about people who walked into a building and never walked out. The hotel is still there. Right now, at this very moment, it is there. The lights are on in the lobby. The front desk is staffed. The rooms are clean and waiting. And somewhere inside, trapped in the walls, are dozens or maybe hundreds of people who made the mistake of checking in. Do not make the same mistake. Do not become part of the hotel. Stay away from the Riverside Grand. Please, I am begging you. Stay away. Because once you check in, you never check out.